The alarm screamed through the prison before sunrise. Red lights flashed across every hallway. Heavy steel doors slammed shut one after another. Officers rushed toward cell block C while inmates froze in silence. Nobody knew exactly what had happened yet, but everyone could feel that something was terribly wrong. Then an officer pulled a tiny black cell phone from inside a prison wall. It looked old. It looked cheap. But what investigators discovered inside that phone shocked everyone. The phone contained secret messages, hidden photos, contact lists, and recordings that reached far beyond the prison fences. It revealed that contraband phones had been moving into the prison for months without anyone noticing. Someone inside was helping them get through security, and someone outside was making sure the deliveries never stopped. The phone was only the beginning. When investigators checked security cameras, they found strange movements during late-night shifts, missing evidence, and deliveries that did not match prison records. Every new clue pointed toward a bigger operation. But the biggest question remained unanswered. Who was secretly bringing phones into one of America's toughest prisons? The answer would turn the entire prison upside down. 3 months earlier, life inside Black Ridge Correctional Facility looked almost normal. The prison sat behind tall fences topped with razor wire. Watchtowers stood at every corner. Cameras watched every hallway. Visitors passed through metal detectors. Every package was searched. Every inmate was counted again and again throughout the day. At least, that was what everyone believed. Officer Daniel Brooks had worked there for nearly 12 years. He believed that careful routines kept everyone safe. Every morning, he checked cells, counted inmates, inspected doors, and watched for anything unusual. Most days were quiet. Some inmates played cards during recreation. Others read books from the prison library. Some spent hours working in the kitchen or cleaning different parts of the facility. But Daniel had learned something important. The quietest days sometimes hid the biggest secrets. One afternoon, while checking a housing unit, Daniel noticed inmate Marcus Hill staring toward a small window instead of joining the others. Marcus had spent years inside prison. He rarely caused trouble. He followed rules and usually stayed away from gangs. Still, something about him seemed different. He smiled for only a second after looking outside. Then he quickly walked away. Daniel remembered that smile. Later that week, another officer reported finding a charging cable hidden inside an empty cleaning closet. Finding a cable inside prison made little sense. Nobody officially owned a cell phone. The cable disappeared before investigators could examine it. Some officers believed an inmate had hidden it. Others believed someone accidentally threw it away. Daniel was not convinced. Tiny clues were starting to appear everywhere. An empty package with unusual tape. A damaged air vent. Fresh scratches near an old storage room. Nothing looked serious by itself. Together, they formed a puzzle that nobody could solve. Outside the prison, retired Detective Sarah Mitchell had recently started working as an investigator for the State Corrections Department. She specialized in uncovering organized smuggling operations. When she reviewed reports from several prisons across the state, she noticed something strange. Different prisons were reporting missing charging cables. Different prisons were finding tiny phone batteries. Different prisons were hearing rumors about secret calls made after midnight. Yet almost nobody ever found the actual phones. Sarah believed that was impossible. Phones did not simply disappear. Someone was hiding them extremely well. She requested permission to inspect Black Ridge because several reports pointed there. At first, prison leaders believed the reports were only rumors spread by inmates. Sarah disagreed. Rumors often begin with a small piece of truth. When she arrived at Black Ridge, she met Officer Daniel Brooks. The two walked through long concrete hallways while discussing the strange reports. Daniel showed her the damaged air vent. He showed her the missing evidence log. He even mentioned Marcus Hill's strange behavior near the window. Sarah listened carefully. Nothing seemed connected. Yet somehow everything felt connected. That evening, as darkness covered the prison yard, officers completed the final inmate count. Everything appeared normal. Then, without warning, one security camera captured a small object dropping from the night sky into the recreation yard. Before anyone could react, 3 inmates sprinted toward it. And hidden inside that package was something that should never have made it past the prison walls. The package hit the ground with a soft thump. For less than 5 seconds, nobody moved. Then 3 inmates ran across the recreation yard as fast as they could. One grabbed the package while another stood nearby, blocking the view from the security camera. The third inmate looked around to make sure no officers were coming. But someone was watching. Officer Daniel Brooks saw the movement on a security monitor. He immediately called for backup. "Yard! Move now!" he shouted into his radio. The prison alarm echoed across the buildings. Officers rushed outside from every direction. The inmates scattered, trying to disappear before anyone reached them. Marcus Hill did not run. He simply turned and walked toward his housing unit like nothing had happened. Daniel noticed that the package was gone. Officers searched the entire yard. They checked trash cans, bushes, drains, benches, and every corner of the fence. They found nothing. It was as if the package had vanished. Sarah Mitchell arrived only minutes later. She looked at the security footage over and over again. The package clearly landed. One inmate clearly picked it up. But no camera showed where it went. "Someone knew exactly where the blind spots were," Sarah said quietly. That worried everyone. Only people familiar with the prison's camera system could know those weak areas. The next morning, prison officials ordered a full search. Every housing unit was inspected. Every mattress was lifted. Every locker was opened. Books were flipped page by page. Shoes were checked. Walls were tapped. Air vents were removed. Nothing unusual appeared. Some officers began to believe the package had never contained anything important. Sarah did not believe that for 1 second. Criminal smuggling operations did not risk prison time over empty boxes. Something valuable had entered the prison. She just had to find it. Later that afternoon, Daniel spoke with Marcus during recreation. "You seemed calm yesterday," Daniel said. Marcus shrugged. "Running only makes people look guilty." Daniel studied his face. Marcus showed no fear, no anger, no panic, only confidence. That made Daniel even more suspicious. Meanwhile, investigators searched outside the prison fence. Near a wooded area, they found fresh footprints leading toward an old service road. The tracks stopped near tire marks. Someone had driven away shortly after the package was dropped. But there were no license plates on camera. The investigation grew larger. State corrections officials joined the case. They discovered similar reports from prisons in several states. Small packages, hidden cell phones, unknown helpers, late-night drone sightings. The pattern was becoming impossible to ignore. Sarah called a meeting. She spread maps, reports, and photographs across a large table. "These aren't random incidents," she explained. "Someone is testing prison security and finding the weakest points." The room became silent. One officer asked the question everyone was thinking. "How many phones are already inside?" Nobody could answer. That evening, Daniel continued checking cells. As he passed an empty laundry room, he heard a faint buzzing sound. It lasted only 2 seconds. Then it stopped. He slowly opened the door. The room was empty. Nothing seemed out of place. Still, the sound had come from somewhere. He searched every shelf. Nothing. He checked every laundry cart. Nothing. Then he noticed one floor tile looked newer than the others. He knelt down. The tile lifted more easily than expected. Underneath was a small hollow space. It was empty. But dust marks showed that something had been hidden there very recently. Daniel immediately called Sarah. Within minutes, investigators carefully examined the hiding place. They found tiny pieces of black plastic, part of a charging cable, and a fingerprint too smudged to identify. It was the first real evidence. Someone had definitely hidden electronic devices inside the prison. The discovery changed everything. Additional officers were assigned to every entrance. Mail inspections became even stricter. Visitors faced longer searches. Maintenance workers were questioned. Food deliveries were inspected twice. Even staff members were required to undergo extra screening before entering the prison. Most employees understood. A few complained. Sarah quietly wrote down every complaint. Sometimes the loudest objections came from people who feared being caught. Just after midnight, while reviewing live security cameras, Daniel noticed a tiny light flashing inside an unused storage hallway. The light blinked 3 times, paused, then blinked 3 more times. No officer was scheduled to be there. Daniel grabbed his flashlight and radio. He hurried toward the hallway. As he reached the corner, he heard footsteps running away. He turned the corner just in time to see a shadow disappear through a heavy steel door. When officers opened the room seconds later, the person was gone. But sitting alone on the cold concrete floor was a brand-new smartphone that was still powered on. Its screen suddenly lit up. An incoming call was flashing across the display. No name. Only one word. Boss. The phone kept ringing. Every officer in the room stared at it. No one touched it for a moment. The screen glowed in the dark storage room, lighting up the cold concrete floor. The single word on the display, "Boss," made the silence feel even heavier. Finally, Sarah Mitchell carefully picked up the phone using protective gloves. The ringing stopped. A second later, a new message appeared. Too late. Sarah looked at Daniel Brooks. "Whoever sent this knows we're here," she said. The room became even quieter. The phone was immediately placed into an evidence bag. Digital investigators were called to examine it without changing anything stored inside. As they waited, Daniel searched every inch of the storage room again. There was only one door. One small window with steel bars. No place for anyone to hide. Yet the person carrying the phone had disappeared in seconds. It did not make sense. The next morning, specialists began examining the device. The phone itself looked ordinary, but it had been carefully modified. Its camera was covered with black tape. The speaker had been made quieter. Several messaging apps had been deleted. Whoever used it knew exactly how to avoid attention. Even more surprising, there were no personal photos. No family pictures. No games. Only short messages using code words. One message read, "Books arrive Friday." Another said, "3 birds landed." Another simply said, "Wall is clear." To most people, the messages meant nothing. To Sarah, they sounded like instructions. She believed the phone was part of a larger smuggling network. But she still needed proof. Meanwhile, prison life continued. Inmates lined up for breakfast. Work crews cleaned hallways. Laundry carts rolled through the buildings. Everything looked normal. Almost too normal. Daniel began watching the laundry workers more closely. He noticed one inmate, Tyler Mason, pushing the same cart through different housing units several times a day. That was unusual. Most laundry workers followed the same route every day. Tyler's path kept changing. Daniel quietly followed him from a distance. Tyler stopped outside a maintenance room. He looked both ways. Then he tied his shoe. It seemed harmless. But when Daniel checked the area a few minutes later, he found a tiny folded piece of paper under a bench. Inside were only 2 numbers. 9:30. No names. No explanation. Just a time. Sarah believed it was another coded message. That evening, officers quietly watched the maintenance hallway before 9:30. Nothing happened. 9:25. Still nothing. 9:28. Everything remained quiet. Then, exactly at 9:30, a cleaning cart entered the hallway. An officer pushed it slowly toward the storage area. The cart looked completely normal. But Sarah noticed something strange. One wheel squeaked loudly. Then it suddenly became silent. She stopped the cart. Inside the frame of the wheel, investigators found a hidden compartment. The compartment was empty, but it was large enough to hold several small cell phones. Someone had removed the contents just before the cart was inspected. Another clue. Another missed chance. Still, the evidence showed the smuggling operation was carefully planned. It was not random. It involved secret hiding places, coded messages, and perfect timing. Later that night, digital investigators unlocked part of the phone's memory. Most files had been erased. But one short video remained. The shaky recording lasted only 7 seconds. It showed the inside of a prison workshop. A cardboard box sat on a work table. Someone opened the box for only a moment. Inside were several wrapped objects about the size of cell phones. Before the camera moved away, one label became visible. It read, "Educational Supplies." The video ended. Sarah immediately checked prison delivery records. A shipment with that exact label had entered Black Ridge only 2 days earlier. Everything inside had been marked as approved. No problems had been reported. Daniel felt a chill. If those boxes weren't fully searched, he whispered. Sarah nodded. We may have found how the phones entered. The next morning, officers rushed to the warehouse where the shipment records pointed. Most of the boxes were already gone. Only one unopened box remained in the corner. Investigators carefully cut the tape. Inside were school notebooks, pencils, and folders. Everything looked completely ordinary. Then Sarah picked up one notebook. It felt heavier than the others. She gently opened the cover. Hidden inside the thick cardboard was a perfectly cut space. And inside that hidden space rested a brand-new smartphone, still wrapped in protective plastic. As officers quickly searched the rest of the shipment, they made an even more shocking discovery. The notebooks were only a distraction. Behind a stack of sealed supply boxes stood a large shipping crate that was never listed on the prison inventory. Someone had secretly moved it into the warehouse. As workers carefully pried the crate open, every person in the room froze. The crate was packed with dozens of unopened prison supply boxes. If Sarah's suspicion was correct, they had just uncovered the biggest contraband phone shipment the prison had ever seen. The warehouse fell completely silent. No one spoke as officers carefully surrounded the large shipping crate. Sarah Mitchell held up her hand. Nobody touches anything until it's photographed, she said. Crime scene investigators hurried inside. Every side of the crate was photographed before the lid was fully removed. The wooden boards had no official prison markings. There was no inventory number. No shipping record. It should never have been inside Black Ridge Correctional Facility. One by one, investigators lifted the supply boxes from the crate. The first box contained ordinary notebooks. The second held folders and pencils. The third looked exactly the same. For a moment, it seemed like the entire investigation had reached another dead end. Then Daniel Brooks picked up one notebook. It felt much heavier than the others. He carefully peeled back the thick cardboard cover. Hidden inside was a slim smartphone sealed inside clear plastic. Another notebook held 2 more phones. A folder contained a charging cable hidden inside its spine. A package of markers concealed tiny SIM cards taped beneath the plastic tray. By the time every box had been searched, investigators had recovered dozens of contraband phones and accessories. It was the largest seizure Black Ridge had ever seen. But Sarah wasn't celebrating. She knew something important. Someone had expected these phones to reach inmates. Someone inside the prison was waiting for them. The next step was finding that person. Instead of announcing the discovery, prison leaders kept it secret. Only a small group of trusted investigators knew the phones had been found. The hope was simple. If the smugglers believed the shipment had arrived safely, they would try to collect it. For the next 2 days, life inside the prison continued as usual. Breakfast was served. Cells were searched. Visitors came and went. Nothing unusual happened. Or so it seemed. Sarah spent hours reviewing old security footage. She wasn't watching inmates anymore. She was watching the prison employees. Most followed the same routines every day. One employee did not. Maintenance supervisor Kevin Turner often entered storage areas without work orders. Sometimes he stayed only a minute. Sometimes 10. His explanation was always the same. Routine inspection. But there were no inspection reports. Daniel quietly checked Kevin's access records. The electronic logs showed something strange. Kevin's keycard had opened warehouse doors late at night several times over the past 3 months. No maintenance work had been scheduled during those hours. Sarah decided it was time to watch him closely. The following evening, investigators hid nearby while Kevin finished his shift. Instead of leaving through the employee parking lot, Kevin walked toward the warehouse. He looked around twice before unlocking the side door. The investigators waited. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. No one came out. Sarah nodded at Daniel. It was time. The team quietly entered the building. Their flashlights swept across shelves filled with cleaning supplies and storage bins. Everything looked normal. Then they heard a faint scraping sound. It came from behind a row of stacked boxes. Daniel rounded the corner. Kevin stood frozen. In his hands was an empty prison supply box identical to the ones used in the hidden shipment. Kevin looked shocked. "So, you found them," he said quietly. He immediately raised his hands. "I'll cooperate." Kevin explained that he had been paid to move sealed boxes after they entered the warehouse. He claimed he never knew exactly who organized the operation. He only received instructions through anonymous messages sent to hidden phones. Every delivery followed the same pattern. Packages arrived mixed with approved supplies. Someone inside moved them. Someone else collected them. Then the phones disappeared across different housing units before anyone noticed. It sounded believable. But Sarah felt something was missing. Kevin knew too much to be only a helper. Investigators searched his locker. Inside they found cash, handwritten notes, and several warehouse keys. But they found no phones. No master contact list. No proof identifying the person giving the orders. Then a corrections officer rushed into the room. "You need to see this," he said. Everyone hurried to the security office. A live camera showed several inmates gathering in cell block C. No fighting. No shouting. They were all looking toward one cell. Daniel zoomed in. Marcus Hill stood quietly beside his bunk. He reached underneath the metal bed frame. Slowly, he pulled out a small object wrapped in black tape. It was another cell phone. Marcus looked directly toward the security camera. Then, before officers could reach his cell, he smiled, pressed one button on the phone, and calmly placed it back under the bed. Across the prison, lights suddenly flickered. Electronic door alarms began sounding one after another. Control room monitors flashed with warning messages. Something inside the prison systems had just gone terribly wrong. And nobody knew whether it was a coincidence, or whether that single phone call had just triggered the next stage of the smuggling operation. The control room filled with warning alarms. Red lights flashed across every monitor. Officers quickly checked every housing unit to make sure the prison remained secure. For a few tense minutes, no one knew whether the strange system alerts were caused by a technical problem or something much more serious. The prison's emergency procedures worked exactly as they were designed to. Backup systems came online, electronic doors stayed locked, and officers were sent to key locations throughout the facility. Daniel Brooks hurried toward cell block C with a team of officers. When they reached Marcus Hill's cell, he was sitting quietly on his bunk. He did not resist. He simply looked at Daniel and said, "You're looking for something." Officers searched the cell from top to bottom. Beneath the bed frame, wrapped in black tape, they found the cell phone Marcus had hidden. It was immediately secured as evidence. At the same time, digital investigators examined the device recovered from Marcus and compared it with the phones found inside the fake school supplies. The phones shared the same software, the same coded contact lists, and the same messaging system. They had clearly been prepared by the same organization before entering the prison. The evidence finally connected the pieces. Sarah Mitchell gathered the investigation team. "We now know how the phones came inside," she said. "They were hidden inside ordinary supply shipments, moved through the warehouse, and secretly distributed inside the prison." Investigators also confirmed that small drones had been used in a few earlier attempts, dropping tiny packages into outdoor recreation areas when security conditions allowed. Those deliveries had been much smaller than the shipment hidden inside the educational supplies, but together they showed that the smugglers were willing to use several different methods. The operation had never depended on just one person. It relied on many small actions. Someone outside prepared the hidden phones. A dishonest employee secretly moved certain shipments. Trusted inmates passed the devices from one person to another using hidden compartments, coded messages, and carefully planned timing. Each person knew only a small part of the plan, making the network difficult to uncover. With Kevin Turner's cooperation and the digital evidence recovered from the phones, investigators were able to identify additional suspects connected to the smuggling operation. State and federal law enforcement agencies continued the investigation outside the prison, following financial records, delivery routes, and communication data. Inside Black Ridge, prison officials immediately strengthened security. Every supply shipment was scanned using improved inspection equipment. Random searches became more frequent. Storage rooms received additional cameras. Maintenance areas were inspected daily. Staff training was expanded to help employees recognize the warning signs of organized contraband smuggling. The prison also upgraded its technology to help detect unauthorized electronic devices and increased monitoring around the perimeter to reduce the risk of illegal drone deliveries. Weeks later, the prison felt different. The hallways were still loud with steel doors and daily inmate counts, but officers were paying closer attention than ever before. Daniel walked through the same corridors where the investigation had begun. He remembered the small clues that almost everyone had ignored: a charging cable, a damaged air vent, a hidden compartment beneath a floor tile, and a notebook that felt just a little too heavy. None of those clues seemed important by themselves. Together, they uncovered one of the largest contraband cell phone smuggling operations the prison had ever faced. Sarah stood beside the warehouse before leaving Black Ridge for her next assignment. She looked back at the prison walls. "This case is over," Daniel said. Sarah nodded slowly. "This one is." She knew prisons across the country continued to face the challenge of keeping contraband out, and investigators would always need to adapt as smugglers changed their methods. The investigation at Black Ridge became an important reminder that strong security depends on careful teamwork, attention to small details, and constant improvement. The hidden phones were seized. The smuggling network was dismantled. The evidence was handed over for prosecution. And behind the prison's towering walls, one lesson remained clear. Sometimes the smallest object can uncover the biggest criminal operation. Thanks for watching. Follow Crime Crimythrax for more real crime stories. Don't forget to like, comment, and share to support the page.